welcome back to our third episode of the life of Moses, and we will have our life study today. And for today's episode, we'll ask our sister Bea to lead us and facilitate our discussion.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. We will be looking at the 10 Commandments today. But before that, we probably need a little bit of background with regards to where Israel is in terms of their timeline of journeying into the Promised Land. But we will read the Decalogue first. So that's Exodus 20, verses 1 to 21. All right. So we will be looking at the Decalogue in Exodus 20, 1 to 21. I will begin by reading a couple of verses, and then we'll go to my right, each person reading 2 verses each. So God spoke all these words, I, the Lord, am your God, who brought you from the land of Egypt, from the house of slavery.
You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself a carved image or any likeness of anything that is in heaven above, or that is on the earth beneath, or that is in the water below.
You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, responding to the transgressions of fathers by dealing with children to the third and fourth generations of those who reject me, and showing covenant faithfulness to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments.
You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold guiltless anyone who takes his name in vain. Remember the Sabbath day to set it apart as holy.
For 6 days you may labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son or your daughter or your male servant or your female servant or your cattle or the resident foreigner who is in your gates.
For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth and the sea and all that is in them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. Honor your father and your mother, that you may live a long time in the land the Lord your God is giving to you.
You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery.
You shall not steal. You shall not give false testimony against your neighbor.
You shall not covet your neighbor's wife. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, nor his ox, nor his donkey, nor anything that belongs to your neighbor. All the people were seeing the thundering and the lightning, and heard the sound of the horn, and saw the mountain smoking. And when the people saw it, they trembled with fear and kept their distance.
He said to Moses, You speak to us and we will listen, but do not let God speak with us, lest we die. Moses said to the people, Do not fear, for God has come to test you, that the fear of him may be before you, so that you do not sin.
The people kept their distance, but Moses drew near the thick darkness where God was. Okay, so I am actually going to be asking a simple question regarding these 10 commandments, because I don't think we will have the time to go through every single command and what it means. And you will have that opportunity when you talk with your small group members. But what I want us to pay attention to is the reason why God gave these commandments to Israel. So I want you to keep that question in mind. Why did God give Israel the 10 commandments? But before you answer me, maybe I will give a little bit of background. So by the time that Moses communicated these commands to Israel in Mount Sinai, the Israelites have already been released by Pharaoh from Egypt. And it was 3 months already. So they have been journeying in the wilderness for a while. A lot of things have happened. They have complained over and over again. The Lord has provided for them with water, miraculously, a number of times. Drinking water, And also the episode with the manna and the quail has happened as well. So a lot of things. The question is, why did God now give this law to them? If you will recall in Exodus 3:12, God promised Moses that he will be with him when he goes to his people and when he confronts Pharaoh. And Moses will know that God was indeed with him when he returns to the mountain, Mount Horeb, to worship. In fact, Mount Horeb and Mount Sinai are the same mountain. So this is what is happening here is a fulfillment of the promise of God. And the people of Israel are now worshiping him together on this mountain. Okay, so I will pause with that and ask you again, because maybe you have some thoughts already. Why do you think did God give Israel these 10 commandments?
To know right from wrong. That's one.
Why is it so important for Israel to be able to discern between what is right and what is wrong? That's a very good point. So why do you think that's the case?
Part of it, I think, it's the law that is given to them so that they can be established as a nation, as distinct from Egyptian law. Of course, they have laws already in Egypt, but in this case, the Lord is giving to them. The literary structure here is more of a covenant codes in the late Bronze Age in the Hittite code. So there's a lot of moral codes, of course, the way you handle your neighbor, how you would treat a thief. So these are part of the ancient Middle Eastern codes of conduct. The only uniqueness here for the Jewish law, the Hebrew law, is the monotheism, which is serving only one God, as compared to the other nations that serve many gods, and also remember the Sabbath and to keep it holy. So these are the only two unique laws for the Ten Commandments, as compared to the ancient Middle Eastern laws in terms of morality, in terms of how do I handle legal terms. So this is like a agreement, basically, between God and His people.
Yeah. So in fact, Israel had just come out of Egypt and they were steeped in the culture of Egypt. And of course, that would have shaped the way that they thought also about what is good and evil, what is right and wrong. So now God had to, change the perspective of His people by giving them His standard of holiness rather than the standards of the Egyptians. Do you have any other thoughts with regard to that? Or perhaps I shall read the way to know the answer. And Abraham actually answered it already. But if you go back to the previous chapter, in chapter 19, in verses 3 to 6, the very same sentiment is given by Scripture. So Moses went up to God, and the Lord called to him from the mountain, "Thus you will tell the house of Jacob, and declare to the people of Israel, you yourselves have seen what I did to Egypt, and how I lifted you on eagle's wings, and brought you to myself. And now, if you will diligently listen to me, and keep my covenant, then you will be my special possession out of all the nations, for all the earth is mine, and you will be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation." So God was entering, in fact, into a covenant with the people of Israel, but for a specific purpose, which is to make them into a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. So what are your thoughts when you reflect on that? What does it mean for Israel to be a kingdom of priests? And why did they have to be a holy nation?
Yeah, because God is holy, I think, and He wants His people to be holy as well. Though, of course, we all know that man are sinners, and it's very hard to reach to that point as what God is. So somehow, I think that this Ten Commandments will be the guidelines for them also as well, for them to not mislead again or to do such evil things like before they did. I think God is I think God is more caring for His people and planning as well to be a nation that is holy, just like you mentioned.
And the word priest is like a mediator, like you're representing a people in front of a holy God. So if it's a kingdom of priests, they are representing peoples now to be representing the nations before the holy God. And I think that's the purpose why why they are set apart, why they are called out of Egypt. They cannot be a people of God if they were in Egypt because they're functioning in different laws there. But the mere fact to go to Mount Sinai and to establish God's kingdom on earth through Israel at this time, and to establish the Mosaic law, the Mosaic covenant in this case, so that their nation will be established to represent peoples, all peoples, to the Holy God.
So we see that continuity between the Abrahamic covenant and the Mosaic covenant, because in the covenant with Abraham, Abraham was chosen so that his descendants could be a blessing to all the nations. Through him, all the families of the earth will be blessed. So now God is shaping Israel to become that blessing to the world by representing the people to God, but also who God is to the people.
Yeah, I don't. So I don't have a good way to say this. These are things that I'm imagining. So I think there's something about the people of Israel being so afraid of God here at the mountain. Right? Going back to the burning bush instance, it makes me think of like that holiness of God. That they're afraid. They're afraid of the power, the sovereignty of who this is. And I know that we think of commandments as being sometimes like things we shouldn't do. But these are things that God is doing to shape them so that they will be his people, right? So they're afraid because they don't know him, right? I mean, I don't know if I'm right on that, but it feels like they fear him because they don't know him. And so the covenant of the commandments is like, you're going to know me and you're going to become my people to like, because Moses now knows God and he's marching right up to the mountain with the thunder, lightning, but the people don't know yet. So I think the commandments have this kind of function of both showing us who God is, but also shaping the people to be his people.
They have experienced the 10 plagues already, and then they have witnessed the parting of the Red Sea, so they see the power of God already. That's part of the fear. So they see the power, they see the miracles, they see the manna, they tasted the manna, they ate the quail, and how the Lord would provide for them water out of the rock. So they have seen the miracles, and that creates fear for a human to see something very, very supernatural. And yeah, I would agree that to know the Creator, to know the one who calls you to become a holy nation, that's something fearful.
So thinking now of how the law functioned for Israel, do you think these laws apply to Christians also and to the rest of humanity? Why or why not?
Is it? The question is it obsolete?
Yeah, or is it still applicable
Or
to
is it
Christians?
absolute? So absolute or absolute. So of course we believe that the laws are absolute truths in per se, but of course it's within the context of a nation, and it's still applicable to us today as Jesus himself is the fulfillment of the law. So when Jesus was saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love your neighbor as yourself, which summarizes the commandments, he was basically talking about the 10 commandments. The first 4, which is to love God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and the last 6 of the 10 commandments is to love our neighbor as ourselves. And I think that's the distinction now, because when we know how to love God as God has commanded his people, then the fear of God is within us and all other fears becomes lesser. But if we don't have the fear of God in us and his law is not in us, then most likely we're afraid of something other than God, and that would drive us into insanity or whatnot. And if there's no law in terms of today, then there will be lawlessness. And if it's lawlessness, then there's unrighteousness, there's criminal, it goes to criminal activity. We will not love our neighbor, we will not love God, and there will be chaos. There's no order. And I think even today in different countries in the world, the reason there's constitution, there's law, because you want order and peace in the whole nation. If there's no law and order, then anything can happen. Crime will be rampant. You cannot go out to the street and have a safe passage, or you're fearing for your life all the time. It's the whole Hebrew concept of shalom. So the reason we're following the law because it creates shalom for all of us, a community of peace and love and joy among us.
I think we need to make a distinction here between the Ten Commandments as law and the many other laws that God gives the Israelite people. Not all of those apply. There's a longer discussion about why that's the case. But throughout both the history of Jewish and Christian tradition, the Ten Commandments have been viewed as clearly revelations of God's intent for humans. If I remember right, Jesus repeats all of these except for the Sabbath, I think, but he himself repeats each one of these commandments for us all. So the church has, not always, but most of the church has recognized these as critical and still standing for Christians.
And in fact, in the New Testament, we see the church called Kingdom of Priests and a holy nation as well. So clearly the New Testament writer wanted to show the connection between Israel as a holy nation and the church also becoming a kingdom of priests for God. Representing Him before the world and also representing the world before Him. And it's in the church that we are also shaped in terms of our character. That's why these laws still apply. We do not do them to be saved. We have already been saved and chosen through Jesus Christ. But as a result of being His people, then we obey the law and show the character of our God. Carmen Imes would say that even in the case of the Jews, they were also chosen before they were given the law. So this is not something that is intended to be given to be saved, but again, it is for the shaping of the already saved people.
One analogy is in our families. That's why our parents have rules for us because they want to safeguard us. They want to mold our character. That's why there are rules as growing up as children, so that we don't become bad. As good parents, we want to train our child in good ways, in good moral ways. And part of it is the law. Part of it is the rules of rule keeping, so that once you keep these rules, they become part of you. You become a very good citizen of the country in a larger scale. But ultimately, the family becomes like a, how would they say it, illustration of why the Ten Commandments is in place, because God's people is basically God's children, and how He takes care of His children. He sets His rules, His boundaries. He wants to take care of them. So the rules are not limiting in that sense, but it's freeing, so that they know where they stand, and it creates a sense of identity, creates a sense of freedom as well.
So before I give the principle for this chapter, do you guys have any thoughts, comments, or observations that you want to share, perhaps on any of the laws that have been given here or other
I
things?
would also like to add about the law, besides also like shaping and of course to be in order, could we also say that this law, that God shows His love also for His people? Not just, strict instructions that you have to comply because you need to be right on this. But could we also say that because I love you, that's why I'm giving you this commands, so that you would not step out of my holiness or out from my purpose. And also what Rev also mentioned a while ago, like to safeguard. So that's also part of Him being loving, to safeguard you.
Yeah.
Yeah,
If we
that's
look
good.
at the laws, it's all for the good of the people anyway. We don't harm ourselves by obeying the laws that have been given to us. And that I think that's
That's
a very good point. Okay, so I will give the principle first, and then you may have some thoughts after. So actually, I only have a couple of principles. The first one is that we are chosen or called for a purpose. And then the second one is connected to the first. We are chosen or called corporately for a purpose. Because sometimes we can be too individualistic in our thinking of how we obey God or how we follow God's calling. And actually, this was given to a community. And we are also a part of a community. First of all, the body of Christ. And so we have to fulfill our purpose together as a body. In relation to that, I'm just wondering how we might apply this in our lives. So when you think of those two principles, chosen or called for a purpose, chosen or called corporately for a purpose, then what comes into your mind?
Are you asking all of us?
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
so I know I'm the American in this room. So your comments about it being given corporately. So Americans tend to be very much emphasize the individualistic nature. So my natural inclination when I read things are, it must be me. It must be me and God just talking. But I really appreciate commenting on it. It's the corporate nature. God saves us to be in community. So the idea, I don't know I can't think of exact examples right now, but just the idea that this should be not just something I think about, what should I do and what I shouldn't do, but also more broadly how this shapes this family that we're all a part of. A more corporate view is really helpful for me to think through.
Even the command on the Sabbath, most people would say, see, this command tells us that God wants us to rest because that's good for us. So we can think about do we give rest to the people who work for us?
Yeah.
That sort of thing. Do we take rest ourselves?
Right.
Sometimes it's so difficult to keep the Sabbath and keep it holy.
Yeah.
So I think as human as we are, we have the tendency to really work 24/7. That's human nature. We want to earn a lot of money. We want to be stable. The whole idea of the Sabbath principle is to trust God. That in one day we stop work because God can provide for you for that day. And then as you continue to trust God, it extends to our work life, that the Lord will provide your manna, your quail, right, in a sense, and that He will protect you. He will go with you, and that's the message of the law of Moses, that because out of His love, He's protecting His people to become a nation, a priest, the pillar of cloud, a pillar of fire, a constant reminder, and of course, eventually the formation of the tabernacle to really establish the worship, Jewish worship at the time, Hebrew worship of the one true God, and the sacrificial system that will be introduced. Part of this is to just really form the very lifeblood of the nation of Israel, so that they are called out of darkness, which is Egypt, darkness in terms of slavery and fear and constantly worrying about their lives, but into freedom to worship the Lord and to really live a life that is pleasing and that is holy to the Lord, unto the Lord, and freedom from fear. Because the fear of God, once it comes to your heart, you no longer fear other fears. You become courageous to face your fears and to overcome your anxiety, your worries, because you have the fear of the Lord, of the one true God.
So the eyes of the world are on us, and the church. How are our relationships inside the church, and even in terms of our own households, our family? That's why there is also a command on honoring your father and mother, that you may live long in the land God is giving you. And all of these things: do not commit adultery, do not covet your neighbor's house, your neighbor's wife. It's supposed to, shape a community that is holy, that people will be able to see and say, this is what it means to be the people of God.
In a sense, the nations that is surrounding Canaan, the Promised Land, they were practicing a lot of violations of these laws. They were murdering each other. They were doing a lot of sexual immorality. They were stealing. So a lot of the violations against the law of God is being done already by the nations. They were worshiping other gods. They were doing a lot of prostitution. So you have this law to just really make the people of God distinct from the whole cultural background of the nations, and why God is also bringing judgment to the land of the Canaanites, the Hivites, the Perizzites, the electric lights, and the mosquito bites. So it sounds like.
and maybe just to return it to the life of Moses. I feel like what's happening here reflects Moses' life and calling also. It's interesting that he comes from the line of Levi, which is the line of the priests. So Moses' life and calling seems to me to reflect the life and calling of Israel, which in turn reflects the life and calling of the church.
Thank you. Thank you, Bea.
Thanks, Bea.